Stepmom slapped my adopted son for being our ring bearer, so I showed her no mercy. I want to tell you about the 3 seconds between when her hand made contact with his face and when the photographer's camera started going off, because those 3 seconds contained every decision I was going to make for the next 6 months. Theo is 6. He came home to us 3 years ago. He had been asking to be our ring bearer for the entire 11 months of our engagement. He had practiced his walk in the living room on a rotating schedule with a pillow we gave him. He had walked down the aisle perfectly. He had delivered the rings. He had sat in his little suit with his small hands in his lap. He had been magnificent. My stepmother Denise had been warm on the surface throughout the engagement in the specific, careful way of a woman who had views she had not expressed, but that were present in the room. She had not attended any planning. She had not asked about Theo since the engagement. She had sent a card that did not mention him. I had filed all of these things because my father Leonardo had been sick, and my energy had been allocated accordingly, and Denise was the variable I had decided to let be the variable until after the wedding. The reception was in full swing. Theo asked to go say hi to my father at a nearby table. He walked over with the same small, serious dignity he had brought to the aisle. Denise was sitting next to my father. She had been drinking. I had been watching her drink because I had registered in the first hour that she was managing her resentment by drinking, and I had made a mental note to stay alert. Theo said, "Hi, Grandma Denise." He said it the way he said hi to everyone, warmly and without expectation. Denise looked at him. She said something to him I could not hear. Theo's face did not change. He said something back. Then Denise slapped him. Not hard. Hard enough. On the cheek. In front of my father. In front of approximately 30 guests with line of sight. I was already standing. I had been moving since her body language told me the thing she said was not okay. I crossed the room. I did not run. I walked at the pace of a woman in a wedding dress moving with purpose. I picked up Theo. I said nothing to Denise. I turned to the photographer who was 10 feet away and had been watching us. I said, "Did you get that?" She said, "I started shooting the second she raised her hand." I said, "Please keep the photos. I'm going to need them." She said, "Understood." I carried Theo to a quiet corner. I sat with him on my lap. I said, "Buddy, are you okay?" He said, "My face hurts a little." I said, "I know." He said, "Why did Grandma Denise do that?" I said, "I don't know. I'm going to find out. I'm so sorry it happened." He said, "It's okay, Mommy. I don't think she likes me." I said, "I'm going to make sure you don't have to see her again." Then he looked at me and said, "Am I still the ring bearer?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "I thought I did a good job, but if she slapped me, maybe I didn't." A 6-year-old who had just been hit at his mother's wedding, and his first concern was whether he had done his job correctly. I said, "Theo, you did the best job any ring bearer has ever done in the history of weddings. The slap had nothing to do with you. I need you to know that completely. Never wonder about that again." He said, "Okay, can I have cake?" I brought him to my husband Rodney. I kissed him. I said, "I have to handle something." He said, "I know. I saw. Do what you need to do. I have him." I did not approach Denise. I approached a woman named Martha, who was a family court judge, and the mother of one of Rodney's college friends. Martha had been watching Denise throughout the reception. Martha had spent 31 years watching adults who should not be around children, and had apparently identified one at our reception. Martha saw me coming and stood up. She said, "I assume this is about what just happened." She told me my legal options. She was specific and clear. She said, "What happens in the next 48 hours will determine what the next 10 years look like. You have the opportunity to set a boundary that cannot be crossed. I recommend setting it. I am available as a witness, and I will write a statement." Then she said, "Your son did nothing wrong. I have been watching him all day. He is a very good boy." My father Leonardo was at his table, crying. He said, "She took a cab. She will not be coming back. I am so sorry." I said, "Dad, this was not your fault." He said, "I want you to know something. I am filing for divorce Monday morning. I have been thinking about it for a year. Tonight was the answer. Whatever you are about to do to Denise has my full support." The next morning, Theo was between us in bed. He had crawled in during the night without crying, just needing to be close. For a moment, everything felt like it might be over. Then Leonardo texted, "Denise wants to apologize. She says it was the alcohol. She wants to call Theo." I stared at the words "call Theo" in a text about a woman who had slapped him 14 hours ago. Rodney read it over my shoulder. He said, "No. No to everything. No call. No apology. No contact." I called Leonardo. He sounded like he hadn't slept. He said, "She's been crying all night. She says she doesn't remember doing it." I said, "Dad, I have photos of her raising her hand." The photographer caught the whole thing. He was quiet, not surprised. The quiet of a man who already knows and needed someone else to say it so he could stop pretending he didn't know. He said, "I know. I just needed to hear you say it." I said, "You said you were filing Monday." He said, "I am. Monday." I did not wait for Monday. I called Martha. She said, "I was waiting for your call. Are you ready?" I filed the police report that afternoon. I brought the photographer's 11 frames, 3 showing her hand making contact, 2 showing Theo's face after, 1 showing me already standing from my table 20 feet away. I brought Martha's statement. I brought everything. 2 days later, there was a knock at the front door. Rodney opened it. I came around the corner and saw Denise standing on our front step holding flowers and a gift bag with tissue paper, the kind you bring to a birthday party. She was dressed nicely, hair done. She looked like a woman who had rehearsed this visit. She said, "I came to say I'm sorry. I brought something for the boy." "Not for Theo, for the boy." Rodney stepped forward so his body filled the doorway. He said, "You need to leave." She looked past him at me. She said, "I just want 5 minutes. I want to apologize to him directly." I moved into the doorway between Denise and the inside of my house where my son was building with blocks and did not know she was here. I said, "You are not coming into this house. You are not speaking to my son. You are not welcome here." And the mask came off. The warmth left her face like someone turned off a light behind it. Her eyes went flat. Her mouth got tight. She said, "He's not your son. That's the problem. He was never your son, and everyone at that wedding was pretending along with you." There it was. The thing she had been thinking for 3 years. The thing she said to him at the table before she slapped him. The thing that had been in every card that did not include his name. I took my phone out. I said, "I am recording this. You are on my property after I told you to leave. You just said what you said about my child. I have a police report filed. If you do not leave in 30 seconds, I am calling the police." She said, "You're going to destroy your father's life over this." I said, "You destroyed it when you hit a 6-year-old at a wedding. 25 seconds. She left. She dropped the flowers on the step. I walked the gift bag to the trash without looking inside. Theo said, "Mommy, who was at the door?" I said, "Nobody important." I called Leonardo. Leonardo. I told him everything. What she said, what she brought, the recording. He said, she told me she was going to the store. Then he said, I filed this morning. The papers are in. She doesn't know yet. I closed my eyes. I had been thinking of my father as the person who might wobble, but he had filed in the morning and changed the locks in the afternoon without telling me. He said, I've been married to her for 8 years. I know what she's capable of when she's cornered. I've been getting ready too. I just didn't know what I was getting ready for until Saturday. My father, who had been sick, who I had been protecting, had been making his own plan on his own timeline. The wedding told him what he was getting ready for the same way it told me. He said, take care of my grandson. My brother Connor called the next morning. He said, Denise just called me sobbing. She says dad is divorcing her because you turned him against her. She says she's going to lose everything. I said, she slapped Theo at my wedding. I have photos. Connor said, I know, I was there. I'm telling you because she's trying to build a case that this is your fault. She's calling everyone. Denise had moved from the apology phase to the campaign phase. She was not trying to get back in. She was making sure the story people told was the one she wrote. Martha said, when people like Denise get cornered, they flip the narrative. She's going to paint herself as the victim. Your job is to make sure the record says otherwise. That's what the photos are for. That's what the police report is for. You built the wall before she tried to climb it. A week later, a letter arrived addressed to Theo. Not to me, not to Rodney, to a 6-year-old. A card with a cartoon bear. Inside, Dear Theo, I am so sorry I scared you. Grandma Denise loves you very much. I hope you can forgive me. She was building a paper trail. She wanted to show a court she had tried to make amends and we blocked her. I put the card in the file. The file was getting thick. One night, Rodney said, Theo asked me today if you were mad at him. I stopped. He said, he thinks mommy is always on the phone because of what happened at the wedding. He thinks it's his fault. I put my phone down. I went to Theo's room. His rocket ship nightlight was on. He was lying on his side with his eyes open. I said, nothing that happened is your fault. Not one piece of it. I have been busy because I am making sure you are safe. That is my job, and I love my job. He said, can you read me a story? I said, I can read you 3. I did the voices. All of them. He fell asleep during the 3rd one. I stayed for a few minutes watching him sleep. The restraining order hearing arrived on a Tuesday. Denise was sitting at a table with her lawyer. Soft blouse, hair neat, hands folded. She looked like a woman who had been wronged. She was performing. She had been performing for years, and this was just the biggest stage. Denise's lawyer spoke first. A single lapse in judgment, the alcohol, repeated efforts to apologize, a family using one isolated incident to cut off a grandmother. He held up the cartoon bear card. He said, my client is remorseful. The family has refused every attempt at reconciliation. Then my lawyer presented the evidence in order. The 11 photographs projected on a screen. Denise's hand rising, making contact, Theo's face after, me already on my feet 20 feet away. The police report, Martha's statement, the recording from the front door. The courtroom heard Denise's voice. He's not your son. That's the problem. He was never your son, and everyone at that wedding was pretending along with you. The room went quiet. Not polite quiet. Real quiet. Denise's composure cracked for the first time. She leaned to her lawyer. His face got tight. Then Leonardo took the stand. My father, who had been sick, who had been married to this woman for 8 years, who had changed his locks and filed his papers and counted 17 unanswered phone calls, sat in that chair and testified. He said Denise had referred to Theo as the charity case on more than one occasion. He said she had told him 2 months before the wedding, if that boy calls me grandma at the reception, I will not be responsible for what I do. He said he thought she was exaggerating. He said he was wrong. He said filing for divorce was the easiest decision he had made in 8 years. Denise stared at him while he spoke. She mouthed something. He did not look at her, not once. The judge granted the restraining order. Full protection. No contact with Theo, me, or Rodney. No approaching our home, Theo's school, or any family event. The judge looked directly at Denise and said, you struck a 6-year-old child at a wedding reception in front of dozens of witnesses, and when confronted, your response was to deny that child's place in his own family. This court does not find your remorse credible. Denise's lawyer asked for a modification. The judge said, denied. I looked at Leonardo. He was still in the witness chair, tired and old and like a man who had just done the hardest right thing of his life. He nodded at me. I nodded back. That evening, Theo was on the living room floor practicing his walk for Connor's wedding next summer, holding a pillow in his small hands, steps measured and careful. He looked up. He said, Mommy, am I doing it right? I said, you're doing it perfect. He said, good. I want to be the best ring bearer again. Rodney said quietly, it's done. I said, it's done. I watched my son walk back and forth across the living room with the pillow balanced perfectly, and I thought about the 3 seconds at the reception, and I thought about how every decision I made in those 3 seconds turned out to be the right one, and I thought about how I will never stop being ready.